Let me take you back to 1968. Rochdale College. It's an educational residential cooperative, a free university in a high-rise in downtown Toronto. It was named after the co-op in Lancaster, England, which shares its name. It opened with no rules, and they have no authority. The Unknown Student, it's a human-like sculpture. It's sort of on guard outside. It represents why they're there at the college. The back end is stuck out, whereas its face is plunged down into the ground. A tribute to those that don't have a face, don't have a voice in the mainstream educational system.
What do you think about Rochdale College?
You mean where it's going? I think it's going downhill fast.
Not exactly big, not exactly little. Being five is best of all, 'cause it's right here in the middle. I'd like to settle down and maybe suck my thumb a bit, but being five is small enough. When you're six, you quit. I'd like to ride my bike around the block. Being five is big enough, but being four is not. I've thought about it in my mind, about being five. I like it best of all, 'cause it's right here in between.
There were a lot of people jumping off the Rochdale building. There were some famous incidents. One of them, two guys were fighting, and they both fell out at once and died. I was sad to lose Katie Hucote, because she was a nice girl. And she left a note. That hurted. But then, on another occasion, I was sitting right about here. And it was summer, and the windows were open. And I heard someone yell in an unusual way, and I heard the thump. And sure enough, it happened. But then the other one that probably goes down in history as the silliest suicide ever, the guy jumped and landed on the roof of an American tourist car and crushed the roof right down to the gear shift. Now, as for people taking drugs and then going flying, I had a real close call. I took some good acid and went up on the roof and decided the aerial would be a good thing to climb and you could keep going. But I was luckily saved by someone.
A lot of people that went to that school or went to that college, I think that that place had a lifelong influence on who they became, like what kind of work they did, their attitudes about, their place in society, all that.
At one time I was working on this bus for the Women in Film Festival. We were pitting it out as a touring bus thing, and we were working, and me and this guy Kevin O'Leary, working outside Rochdale where it was parked, and we were working at night time. This was the only time we could get together, and this guy would come up and say, "Oh, I need to score. Can't you go in the building and get me some weed?" And they just go on and on. And it was like 1 a.m, and this guy was so persistent. Eventually I said, "Okay, I'll go up and I'll see." But it was too late for the official drug dealers even, so I couldn't help the guy. We got woken up on Tuesday morning by a Globe and Mail reporter with a photographer saying, "I've come to photograph you being evicted. The police are on their way, with the bailiffs and the police, they're on their way now." So we all got ready, naked as always, because nobody wore any clothes where I lived, right? And so we were battling naked with the police. It was pretty funny. At one point, I grabbed a policeman's hat and put it on and stood up and said, "Stop!" You know, everybody stopped for a moment. It was quite funny. Fortunately, it didn't escalate. It could have escalated, but it didn't. We just left. They did let us put some clothes. They ordered us to put clothes on, in fact.
Had the idea that education could be transmitted somewhere other than a formal institution, it was a good thing. Oh, education center. Yoga, swimming, ceramics, drama, sculpture, revolution. Folk singing, cosmology, life drawing, movie. So that's the curriculum. At the time, we thought we could gather similar enough resource people that we could educate ourselves in a way that was far superior than the big institution. Yeah, silly stuff like this happened. Rochdale Socio-Political Philosophical Review. That was more or less playing fun at the established academia.
And like, I don't know if you know about the nature of the diplomas or degrees. Apparently you could get a degree simply by renting a room there or living in a commune there. Right? So it was like a degree or diploma in living.
Do you have a Rochdale diploma?
No, not officially anyway. I think I could get one though.
There was a group of security people that the formal student body organized, and then they were taken over by a drug dealer, biker gang like security group that did a better job.
What was the need for security?
Security to keep young people from coming and buying drugs. That was one. And security for keeping the wrong kind of drug dealers from coming in the building. There was a strong ethos that marijuana was fine, but hard drugs were not. And supposedly the security system could keep that sorted out.
The elevators, that was really something else. If you wanted to go somewhere and you wanted to get there in a certain time, then you had to get in training because you got to use the stairwell. I lived on the 17th floor, and it could take 45 minutes to get there if you used the elevator, because the elevator was a pot party in progress. It would be added onto and to the next elevator at each floor.
About the elevators and the soul of the elevators, after you've done acid in an elevator, you feel differently about it. It becomes animated, and the elevators as a group had horrendous group behavior. Floors were lettered, not numbered. And this was a big feature because everybody who lived in the building knew what floor they were on, but anyone who came in couldn't figure out what letter of the alphabet 11 was.
It was obviously, a total failure practically. You got pipes being broken in the corridor. I remember one time I came up and there's water coming right down the corridor, and these guys had got hammers, they're trying banging on the pipes, with water coming out full force, right? So I whipped up the stairs, went to my room, got a X-Acto knife, cut a piece of dowel, got a hammer, went back down there and plugged the thing, in front of them. There's another thing where they would get drunk on the roof and they'd drop their beer bottles down the breather stack for the whole drainage system for the entire building. They were sabotaging the building because they knew one day they'd have to leave and they didn't want anybody else to, be there.
Now 1973. Speed addicts, suicides, drug dealers are all getting highlighted in the newspapers and on TV. It's clear that Rochdale was not supposed to be what it is now. Now it's a receptacle of people with their own personal problems with the city. The original dream of life in a quiet limbo is long gone. The kids of Rochdale are not against the city anymore. They're caught up in its problems.
Well, one of the funny stories that I know of is, as a friend of mine went there to buy drugs one day, and he was a youngster. He was like 17 or so, and he'd gotten out to the front of the place, and he was walking along. He was walking along on the forecourt of the building, and as he walked along, something hit him in the head. And then he noticed all kinds of things were dropping around him on the sidewalk. And he looked down to see closely what it was, and they were lumps of black hash that someone had thrown out the window. They were probably getting raided upstairs on some floor up there in the length of the building. And they threw it out the window, and it hit him in the head. So he stopped, picked it all up, stuffed it in his pocket, and ran to the subway and escaped to the East End. So he never even had to go inside the building. It was delivered unto him.
I was sitting here one evening, and I heard a football team walk past the window here, and looked out, and sure enough, it was police with sledgehammers and long axes and helmets. They didn't want to bring their cars too close to the building because people would throw cement blocks and bricks and stuff at the cars. So that sense of, here's me quietly at the coach house, having the local police army go over to the building where I live, I was quite comfortable to be here. And later on I heard it was a really big buzz.
When you gather glass, you have a blowpipe, and you go in and you gather a 360-degree turn of the blowpipe. You do everything evenly and repetitively. But I thought to break up the process of how to do that, and that's why it's segmented, and that's why it's blown off-center, because I wouldn't turn the pipe all the way in there, and I wouldn't turn the pipe all the way when I'm blowing. I decided to bring like a filmic sense to the operation and break it up, and this is what evolved, this thing. It's like, if I was to do everything as I was supposed to, by being told how to do it, this would be a sphere rather than this thing.
I had a little room. It was $60 a month. I would go away for 3 months to BC and come back again. My room would still be there. I hadn't paid any rent. Stuff like that went on all the time. And that's where all the trouble started, because they never kept up with their mortgage. So it just snowballed.
A whole group of us were told that the building was going to be managed by an accounting firm, and that the free rent deal was over, and that rents would be due, and formal eviction notices would be given. There were other people who thought they had a right to stay there and thought there was a political cause to be fought. I think in the end, services got cut, like hydro and water and stuff like that. It was a very drawn-out process, maybe 2 or 3 years, because there were some leases that were drawn up that were obliged to be fulfilled.